So Kyle mentioned this morning we've got a new governor, new administration. So that resulted in us getting. We have a new director. We have a new deputy director. We have a couple of new positions that were created as a result of that political change in leadership. Heavy focus on alternative fuels. You know, we're pretty well on the same path with California. Our governor stated he wants to adopt a lot of the legislation and policies that California's had for some time now. So, you know, that's pushing us towards electrification of our fleet, as Kyle mentioned earlier today. We've had a lot of success with employee acceptance and use of the alternative fuel vehicles in the light fleet, particularly in the metro area around Denver. And it's really the simple fact of it's pretty easy for them to use those things around that area. We've got some infrastructure going in place, and that's one of the keys, is having the charging stations readily available, easy to use, putting out the information, the education that the employees need to know about how those vehicles work, how you charge them, and just make it easy for them to do it. And then once they jump in that Chevy Bolt for the first time and drive it, it's actually kind of a fun car to drive. You know, I'm not a car guy, but you know, I drove one up towards the Eisenhower Tunnel, and I was really surprised at you know, how it performs. It's got a lot of torque, and it's a lot of right now torque, and they're kind of fun to drive, and it's a lot easier to park them if you're going downtown for a meeting. So there's a lot of good selling points to those things in metropolitan administrative type environment. Now our guys out in, you know, the rural corners of Colorado, it's a little bit harder of a sell because the infrastructure isn't there yet. And it's kind of hard to tell a traffic maintenance worker that an electric vehicle is going to do what he needs to do, especially when he was born and raised. You know, his mom put a bottle of diesel fuel in his mouth when he was born, and he likes diesel trucks, and that's just the way it is. You know, it's hard to change that guy's mind. So, but we're working on that. As Kyle alluded to, we're a little bit more cautious about in the heavy fleet, so we're kind of dipping our toe in the water. Chris mentioned the you know, the aerial bucket trucks with the electric over hydraulic. So Howard and I have been working with vendors to kind of help build our spec for our next award of aerial bucket trucks and build it around that electric over hydraulic system. So that gets us into some semblance of using alternative means of operating our diesel equipment out in the field where we don't have to burn diesel to operate that bucket. And you know, just what we've observed of the vendors that have shown us their equipment, there's no reason not to do that because they perform just as well. So that's kind of an easy, quick hit on the heavy fleet side. The other ones we'll approach with caution. You've seen me, if you've been coming to these conferences, I've talked about our telematics a couple of times over the last few years. We're now at full implementation across our fleet of telematics. We've begun to integrate those into our maintenance operations, particularly winter snowplow operations. And you heard Kyle talk about the use of friction sensors and some other aspects of that we're going to continue pushing forward on. Right now, and I'll show you a little more detail during our AVL discussion panel, but right now we can tie in the telematics system with the Iteris MDSS system, you know, your maintenance decision support system, and we can show some data on the other end of that process to the folks sitting in a traffic operations center or whatever. I think that's going to continue to grow. It may not be the exact same system we have today, but we're going to continue down that path. The friction sensors, Kyle didn't really mention it, but and the guys from Greeley could probably attest to this. They were kind of the early adopters of the friction sensors out there in the supervisor vehicles in the northeastern part of Colorado. And there was actually several instances over the last couple of winters where those friction sensors enabled the leadership to decide whether or not to treat the road with anti-icer or de-icer as the storm was coming in. And based on that data, there were certain roads and certain storms where they made the decision, we're not going to treat that road, you know, because the data doesn't indicate it's necessary. And it proved to be true that, you know, so we saved how many gallons of de-icer by not wasting it on a storm where we didn't have to. And then the opposite of that is also true. Knowing those road conditions in a little more level of detail can tell you that, okay, this road we do need to treat, and we can prevent losing the road from the get-go instead of having to try to recover the road after it already froze over. So there is some promise there that that's going to be a good tool out in the field across the state. We're also looking at buying more tow plows, and this is kind of in the lines of safety, also the mobile safety barriers. We have 3 mobile safety barriers right now. I'm the more conservative guy in that conversation because I want to see the utilization on them before I commit to buying more of them. My thought is that if we are going to buy more, then we need a policy that directs that they get used. I mean, there's no question that they do provide a safer work environment for guys that are doing guardrail work or in certain cases bridge work. There's no doubt, but you have to make them use the tool. Otherwise, it's going to sit in the yard and not get utilized. And that's a $500,000 investment. So, that's where I believe we need not just buy the equipment and say, hey, we're going to call it good. We did something safe, but put the policy behind it to make it happen. One thing our new executive director implemented along with our highway safety office is a safety challenge. It kind of gets after some of the things, Bob was bringing up in his presentation is, how do we actually make an impact on safety? And this is to get the employees involved in that process and get their ideas brought forward to the headquarters level. And it's a little competition. Whoever comes up with the best, most viable, and I'm not sure if this is a word, but I'll use it, implementable safety suggestion, they have an opportunity to win that competition, and we're going to buy them a plow truck. And going forward, so they'll get an extra plow truck in their work unit. Well, they got to get rid of an old one.
Get that anyway.
But no, not necessarily. They'll get a jump on replacing an old one. And then we're also looking at expanding that to. They've identified a need for more traffic control trucks with the attenuator, the Scorpion on the back. So that's going to be another prize. Now, what's funding that is kind of interesting. Where those funds are coming from is new leadership has decided we need to ease up on travel. Not do so much travel. So the money we save by not traveling will hopefully buy a couple of more vehicles for the guys out in the field. I think we're safe because the equipment group is well respected among our leadership. So I think I'll be able to come to these things for the net foreseeable future. That's kind of the high level view of some of the new things that were either brand new or things that we've been working on that we're going to advance to the next level over the coming years. So you'll see some more detail on those over the next coming days from some of our other presentations.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.